A year or two ago, I was speaking to a famous Yale professor, one of the most noted scholars in the country, and one who is even more than a scholar, because he is in every sense of the word a man. We had been discussing the Yale-Harvard football teams, and he remarked of a certain player, "I told them not to take him, for he was slack in his studies, and my experience is that, as a rule, the man who is slack in his studies will be slack in his football work. It is character that counts in both. Bodily vigor is good, and vigor of intellect is even better, but far above both is character. It is true, of course, that a genius may, on certain lines, do more than a brave and manly fellow who is not a genius. And so, in sports, vast physical strength may overcome weakness, even though the puny body may have in it the heart of a lion. But in the long run, in the great battle of life, no brilliancy of intellect, no perfection of bodily development will count when weighed in the balance against that assemblage of virtues, active and passive, of moral qualities which we group together under the name of character. And if between any two contestants, even in college sport or in college work, the difference in character on the right side is as great as the difference of intellect or strength the other way, it is the character side that will win. Of course, that does not mean that either intellect or bodily vigor can safely be neglected. On the contrary, it means that both should be developed, and that not the least of the benefits of developing both comes from the indirect effect which this development itself has upon the character. In very rude and ignorant communities, all schooling is more or less looked down upon, but there are now very few places indeed in the United States where elementary schooling is not considered a necessity. There are any number of men, however, priding themselves upon being hard-headed and practical, who sneer at book learning and at every form of higher education, under the impression that the additional mental culture is at best useless and is ordinarily harmful in practical life. Not long ago, two of the wealthiest men in the United States publicly committed themselves to the proposition that to go to college was a positive disadvantage for a young man who strove for success. Now, of course, the very most successful men we have ever had, men like Lincoln, had no chance to go to college, but did have some indomitable tenacity and such keen appreciation of the value of wisdom that they set to work and learned for themselves far more than they could have been taught in any academy. On the other hand, boys of weak fiber, who go to high school or college instead of going to work after getting through the primary schools, may be seriously damaged instead of benefited. But as a rule, if the boy has in him the right stuff, it is a great advantage to him should his circumstances be so fortunate as to enable him to get the years of additional mental training. The trouble with the two rich men whose views are above quoted was that, owing largely perhaps to their own defects in early training, they did not know what success really was. Their speeches merely betrayed their own limitations, and did not furnish any argument against education. Success must always include, as its first element, earning a competence for the support of the man himself, and for the bringing up of those dependent upon him. In the vast majority of cases, it ought to include financially rather more than this, but the acquisition of wealth is not in the least the only test of success, and after a certain amount of wealth has been accumulated, the accumulation of more is of very little consequence indeed from the standpoint of success, as success should be understood both by the community and the individual. Wealthy men who use their wealth aright are a great power for good in the community, and help to upbuild that material national prosperity which must underlie national greatness. But if this were the only kind of success, the nation would be indeed poorly off. Successful statesmen, soldiers, sailors, explorers, historians, poets, and scientific men are also essential to national greatness, and in fact, very much more essential than any mere successful businessman can possibly be. The average man, into whom the average boy develops, is of course not going to be a marvel in any line, but if he only chooses to try, he can be very good in any line, and the chances of his doing good work are immensely increased if he has trained his mind. Of course, if as a result of his high school, academy, or college experience he gets to thinking that the only kind of learning is that to be found in books, he will do very little. But if he keeps his mental balance, that is, if he shows character, he will understand both what learning can do and what it cannot, and he will be all the better the more he can get.